Section 11 of Astounding Stories 13, January 1931. By Various. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Eye of Allah. By C. D. Willard. Part B. The doctor was again examining the partly rigid body. He opened one hand. It held a cake of soap. There was a grease mark on the hand. Delamater supplied the explanation. He touched some grease on the old car I was using, he said. Must have gone directly to wash it off. See, there is water spilled on the floor. Water had indeed been splashed on the tile floor of the bathroom. A pool of it still remained about the heavy, foreign-looking shoes of the dead man. Something in it caught Delamater's eye. He leaned down to pick up 3 pellets of metal, like small shot, round and shining. "I'll keep these," he said, "though the man was never killed with shot as small as that." "We shall have to wait for the autopsy report," said the chief crisply. "That may give the cause of death. Was there anyone in the room? Did you enter it with him last night, Del?" "No," said the operative. "He was very much agitated when we got here, dismissed me rather curtly at the door. He was quite upset about something, spoke English none too well, and said something about a warning and damned our Secret Service as inefficient." "A warning," said the chief. The dead man's briefcase was on the bed. He crossed to it and undid the straps. The topmost paper told the reason for the man's disquiet. It showed the familiar staring eye, and beneath the eye was a warning. This man was to die if he did not leave Washington at once. The chief turned to the hotel manager. "Was the door locked?" "Yes." "But it is a spring lock. Someone could have gone out and closed it after him." "Not this time. The deadbolt was thrown. It takes a key to do that from the outside, or this thumb turn on the inside." The hotel man demonstrated the action of the heavy bolt. "Then with a duplicate key a man could have left this room and locked the door behind him." "Absolutely not. The floor clerk was on duty all night. I have questioned her. This room was under her eyes all the time. She saw this man return, saw your man here," and he pointed to Delamater, "leave him at the door. There was no person left the room after that." "See about the autopsy, Doctor," the chief ordered. And to the manager, "Not a thing here must be touched. Admit only Mr. Delamater and no one else unless he vouches for them." "Del," he told the operative, "I'm giving you a chance to make up for last night. Go to it." And Robert Delamater went to it with all the thoroughness at his command, and with a total lack of result. The autopsy helped not at all. The man was dead. It was apparently a natural death. Not a scratch nor a mark on him was the report. But "Next time it will be you," the note with the staring eye had warned the Secretary of State. The writer of it was taking full credit for the mysterious death. Robert Delamater had 3 small bits of metal, like tiny shot, and he racked his brain to connect these with the death. There were fingerprints, too, beautifully developed upon the mysterious missives, prints that tallied with none in the records. There were analyses of the paper, of the ink, and not a clue in any of them. Just 3 pellets of metal. Robert Delamater had failed utterly, and he was bitter in the knowledge of his failure. "He had you spotted, Del," the chief insisted. "The writer of these notes may be crazy, but he was clever enough to know that this man did see the Secretary, and he was waiting for him when he came back. Then he killed him." "Without a mark?" "He killed him," the chief repeated. "Then he left, and that's that." "But," Delamater objected, "the room clerk—" "Took a nap," broke in the chief. But Delamater could not be satisfied with the explanation. "He got his, all right," he conceded. "Got it in a locked room 9 stories above the street, with no possible means of bringing it upon himself, and no way for the murderer to escape. I tell you there is something more to this. Just the letter to the Secretary, as if this Eye of Allah were spying upon him." The chief waved all that aside. "A clever spy," he insisted. "Too clever for you. And a darn good guesser. He had us all fooled. But we're dealing with a madman, not a ghost. And he didn't sail in through a 9th-story window, nor go out through a locked door. Neither did he spy on the Secretary of State in his private office. Don't try to make a supernatural mystery out of a failure, Del." The big man's words were tempered with a laugh, but there was an edge of sarcasm, ill-concealed. And then came the next note, and the next. The letters were mailed at various points in and about the city. They came in a flood, and they were addressed to the President of the United States, to the Secretary of War of the Navy, to all the cabinet members, and all carried the same threat under the staring eye. The United States, to this man, represented all that was tyrannical and oppressive to the downtrodden of the earth. He proposed to end it, this government first, then others in their turn. It was the outpouring of a wildly irrational mind that came to the office of the harassed Chief of the United States Secret Service, who had instructions to run this man down, this man who signed himself the Eye of Allah. And do it quickly, for the notes were threatening. Official Washington, it seemed, was getting jumpy and was making caustic inquiries as to why a Secret Service department was maintained. The Chief himself was directing the investigation, and getting nowhere. "Here is the latest," he said one morning, "mailed at New York." Delamater and a dozen other operatives were in his office. He showed them a letter printed like all the others. There was the eye, and beneath were words that made the readers catch their breath. "The Eye of Allah sees. It has warned. Now it will destroy. The day of judgment is at hand. The battleship Maryland is at anchor in the Hudson River at New York. No more shall it be the weapon of a despot government. It will be destroyed at 12 o'clock on September 5th. "Wild talk," said the Chief, "but today is the 4th. The commander of the Maryland has been warned. Approach by air or water will be impossible. I want you men to patrol the shore and nail this man if he shows up. Lord knows what he intends. Bluffing, probably, but he may try some fool stunt. If he does, get him." 11:30 by the watch on Robert Delamater's wrist found him seated in the bow of a speedboat the following morning. They patrolled slowly up and down the shore. There were fellow operatives, he knew, scores of them, posted at all points of vantage along the docks. 11:45, and the roar of seaplanes came from above where air patrols were, guarding the skies. Small boats drove back and forth on set courses. No curious sightseeing craft could approach the Maryland that day. On board the battleship, too, there was activity apparent. A bugle sounded, and the warning of bellowing klaxons echoed across the water. Here, in the peace and safety of the big port, the great man of war was sounding general quarters, and a scurry of running men showed for an instant on her decks. Anti-aircraft guns swung silently upon imaginary targets. The watchers smiled at the absurdity of it all, this preparation to repel the attack of a wild-eyed writer of insane threats. And yet, he knew, too, there was apprehension in his frequent glances at his watch. 1 minute to go. Delamater should have watched the shore. And instead he could not keep his eyes from the big fighting ship silhouetted so clearly less than a mile away, motionless and waiting. Waiting. For what? He saw the great turreted guns, useless against this puny, invisible opponent. Above them the fighting tops were gleaming, and above them Delamater shaded his eyes with a quick, tense hand. The tip of the mast was sparkling. There was a blue flash that glinted along the steel. It was gone, to reappear on the fighting top itself. Then lower. What was it? The watching man was asking himself. What did it bring to mind? A streetcar? A defective trolley? The zipping flash of a contact made and broken? That last! Like the touch of an invisible wire, tremendously charged, a wire that touched and retreated, that made and lost its contact, the flashing arc was working toward the deck. It felt its way to the body of the ship. The arc was plain, starting from mid-air to hiss against the armored side. The arc shortened, went to nothing, vanished. A puff of smoke from an open port proved its presence inside. Delamater had the conviction that a deadly something had gone through the ship's side, was insulated from it, was searching with its blazing, arcing end for the ammunition rooms. The realization of that creeping menace came to Delamater with a gripping, numbing horror. The seconds were almost endless as he waited. Slowly, before his terrified eyes, the deck of the great ship bulged upward. Slowly it rolled and tore apart. A mammoth turret with 16-inch guns was lifting unhurriedly into the air. There were bodies of men rocketing skyward. The mind of the man was racing at lightning speed, and the havoc before him seemed more horrible in its slow, leisurely progress. If he could only move, do something. The shock of the blasted air struck him sprawling into the bottom of the boat. The listener was hammered almost to numbness by the deafening thunder that battered and tore through the still air. At top speed the helmsman drove for the shelter of a hidden cove. They made it an instant before the great waves struck high upon the sand spit. Over the bay hung a ballooning cloud of black and gray, lifting for an instant to show in stark ghastliness the wreckage, broken and twisted, that marked where the battleship Maryland rested in the mud in the harbor of New York. The eyes of the Secret Service men were filled with the indelible impress of what they had seen. Again and again before him came the vision of a ship full of men in horrible, slow disintegration. His mind was numbed and his actions and reactions were largely automatic, but somehow he found himself in the roar of the subway, and later he sat in a chair and knew he was in a Pullman of a Washington train. He rode for hours in preoccupied silence, his gaze fixed unseeingly, striving to reach out and out to some distant, unknown something which he was trying to visualize, but he looked at intervals at his hand that held 3 metal pellets. He was groping for the mental sequence which would bring the few known facts together and indicate their cause. A threat, a seeming spying within a closed and secret room, the murder on the 9th floor, a murder without trace of wound or weapon. Weapon! He stared again at the tangible evidence he held, then shook his head in perplexed abstraction. No. The man was killed by unknown means. And now, the Maryland, and a visible finger of death, touching, flashing, feeling its way to the deadly cargo of powder sacks. Not till he sat alone with his chief did he put into words his thoughts. "A time bomb did it," the chief was saying. "The officials deny it, but what other answer is there? No one approached that ship. You know that, Del. No torpedo nor aerial bomb. Nothing as fanciful as that." Robert Delamater's lips formed a wry smile. Nothing as fanciful as that, and he was thinking of what he hardly dared express. "We will start with the ship's personnel," the other continued. "Find every man who was not on board when the explosion occurred." "No use," the operative interrupted. "This was no inside job, Chief." He paused to choose his words, while the other watched him curiously. "Someone did reach that ship, reached it from a distance, reached it in the same way they reached that poor devil I left at room 947. Listen." He told his superior of his vigil on the speedboat, of the almost invisible flash against the ship's mast. "He reached it, Chief," he concluded. "He felt or saw his way down and through the side of that ship, and he fired their ammunition from God knows where." "I wonder," said the big man slowly, "I wonder if you know just what you are trying to tell me, just how absurd your idea is. Are you seriously hinting at long-distance vision through solid armor plate, through these walls of stone and steel, and wireless power transmission through the same wall?" "Exactly," said the operative. "Why, Del, you must be as crazy as this Eye of Allah individual. It's impossible." "That word," said Delamater quietly, "has been crossed out of scientific books in the past few years." "What do you mean?" "You have studied some physical science, of course?" Delamater asked. The chief nodded. "Then you know what I mean. I mean that up to recent years science had all the possibilities and impossibilities neatly divided and catalogued. Ignorance, as always, was the best basis for positive assurance. Then they got inside the atom, and since then your real scientist has been a very humble man. He has seen the impossibility of yesterday become the established fact of today." The Chief of the United States Secret Service was tapping with nervous irritation on the desk before him. "Yes, yes," he agreed, and again he looked oddly at his operative. "Perhaps there is something to that. You work along that line, Del. You can have a free hand. Take a few days off, a little vacation if you wish. Yes, and ask Sprague to step in from the other office. He has the personnel list." End of Part B.